Hello everyone, good morning. Please bear with me. This is my first time creating a video on Google Slides, so hopefully it works out. Today my presentation is on Prader-Willi syndrome. What is Prader-Willi syndrome? Well, it's a very rare complex disorder that happens when there's a loss of function of the genes in the region of chromosome 15. How rare is it, you may ask? Well, only 1 in 10,000 people are affected by it worldwide, so it's definitely not a syndrome that we see very often. What are the causes of Prader-Willi syndrome? Well, children born with this disorder are missing critical genes in the area of the chromosome 15. On slide 3, the image shows the cause of deletion, where part of the chromosome that was inherited from the person's father is missing or deleted. On slide 4, you can see the typical facial features of people that are diagnosed with Prader-Willi syndrome. They tend to have a more narrow forehead, almond-shaped eyes, thin upper lips, and downturned corners of the mouth. The 3 developmental domains that are affected by Prader-Willi syndrome are intellectual development, physical development, and social emotional development. On the next slide that you guys can see are some physical symptoms that come from Prader-Willi. The first one I listed is excessive hunger. This is actually the most typical side effect, and if it's not managed properly, it can easily lead into childhood obesity. Some more symptoms are reduced hormone production, abnormal walking. They also have small hands and feet, excessive sleepiness, and they also typically have delayed or incomplete puberty. Most people who are diagnosed with Prader-Willi syndrome, they are infertile and they are unable to have children of their own. On the next slide, we can see some of the typical behaviors for people who are diagnosed with Prader-Willi syndrome. They tend to show obsessive compulsive behaviors. They tend to struggle with depression that could lead to self-harming behaviors. They have aggressive temper outbursts, and they tend to really struggle socially. Some of those social struggles that they face are the lack of the ability to recognize the emotions of others, so the lack of empathy, the ability to have a back and forth communication, and they have a hard time being able to accurately interpret social cues amongst their peers. On the next slide, you guys will see some possible intellectual effects from Prader-Willi syndrome. They have overall developmental delays, learning disabilities, and speech delays. More than 50% of individuals with this disorder, they face mild to moderate intellectual disabilities and learning problems. So it's very common for someone who is diagnosed with this disorder to have a learning disability or an intellectual disability. But on the next slide, as you can see, educational accommodations. It's very common to see children with this disorder having an IEP in place during their educational experience, which their IEP also includes a health plan. Some of the educational accommodations that can be made, which would be included in the IEP, would be allowing extra time for tests and assignments, adaptive physical education, and another example would be reading questions on a test to the student instead of the student reading them themselves. On the next slide, there's a question. Is there a cure? Unfortunately, no, there's not a cure, but there are many different types of treatments available to help with the symptoms brought on by this disorder. A critical treatment plan that should be put in place, especially for children, is to monitor food intake and to encourage healthy eating habits to avoid childhood obesity. Like I said before, that's probably the most common symptom of this syndrome, is childhood obesity, which because of the symptom of excessive hunger. On the next slide, you can see comorbidity factors, type 2 diabetes, which we see a lot in people who are obese, Sleep-related breathing problems. They do tend to have sleep problems, so I can see why this is something they can face later on. And gastrointestinal problems. On the next slide, life expectancy. Fortunately, they are able to live normal lifespans as long as, they continue to participate in ongoing treatment plans to help out with whatever symptoms they are experiencing. So to end my presentation, my reflection on Prader-Willi syndrome is that, through my research, I do understand that Prader-Willi syndrome affects the child's physical, intellectual, and social emotional domains of development. But with proper treatment and educational accommodations being made, a child can live a happy, normal, healthy lifestyle as long as they're going along with treatment, they're being accommodated through the schools. So with this disorder, it's something that we don't see often, but it is important that we do know the signs and we do know how to go about teaching students that may have this disorder. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you for listening.